you're going to find the Kicks either front wheel or all-wheel drive, just depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in. This SR Premium is going to be all-wheel drive in Canada. You can still get away with front-wheel drive in the wintertime. You just want to make sure you have a good set of winter tires on. The Kicks has the option for either 16, 17, or 19-inch wheels, depending on which trim level. And I gotta say, I'm not crazy about the basic style that you're gonna find. So the standard style you're gonna find inside of this SR. It's almost like an EV style wheel, but you do have the option right from the factory of going for a 19-inch blacked out split spoke wheel. And I gotta say, that blacked out 19-inch option looks so much better than the default option you're gonna find inside of this ride. The front end style of the Kicks is pretty unique. Inside of the SR Premium, you're going to find LED headlamps with signature lighting, and later on at night, it does look pretty good. Technology-wise, in the front end, inside of the SR Premium, you're going to find the forward sensing system along with the front-facing camera. So the Kicks does have the option for an around view monitor or 360 cam, but it's strictly going to be in that SR Premium trim level. The lowest trims don't have that available as an option. And that's the same way with some added additional safety technology. It's going to be standard in this highest trim, but unavailable in the lower trim levels of the ride. The Kicks only has a single engine choice that's available, and that's this 2-liter naturally aspirated, so non-turbocharged inline 4. It's paired with a CVT, so continuously variable transmission, which means that there's no set number of gears. Power-wise, this thing pushes out 141 horsepower and 140 pound-feet of torque. So not the most powerful car by any stretch, but for the price point, it's pretty good. The car does have a sport mode available, so let's just hop up to the sport mode there. Holds on to the RPMs a little bit longer to give you a sportier performance, and let's get back up to highway speed, and 3, 2, and... Yeah, we're almost redlining and getting up to 6,000 plus RPM. 100, there we go. So I gotta say, I am surprised at how far up that RPM counter was going. Like I was saying, it was going like over 6,000 RPM. You could hear it. The engine was like, I want to go so bad. I mean, for what it is, a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine, it's going to get you from A to B, and it's going to have a little bit of peppiness when you put it into that sport mode. And then underneath the hood here, it is kind of messy because there's no engine cover, but you've got some exposed wires all over the place, and you can easily top up all your fluids as necessary. So your wiper fluid there, you can easily change your oil, and then there's also easy access to the battery off to the right side. Then the warranty for the Kicks is pretty industry standard. So your basic warranty is going to be a 3-year, 36,000 mile, 60,000 kilometer, with the powertrain getting bumped up to 5 years, 60,000 mile, 100,000 kilometers as well. So you do get a pretty good warranty for the vehicle. You can always increase it at time of purchase if you need that extra peace of mind. But just do yourself a favor, regular oil changes, regularly scheduled maintenance to make sure that this car will last. Looking at the back end of the Kicks, you're going to find LED tail lamps regardless of the trim level that you're looking at. And the lamps have a nice glossy black bezel that traces all the way throughout the middle part and just follows all the way through. Regardless of the trim level that you're looking at, you're always going to find the reverse park sensing system inside of the ride. That's always going to be there. And then getting into the trunk of the ride is going to be a manual process regardless of the trim level that you're looking at. Just underneath the Nissan badge by the backup camera, there's a button there that you can push in order to get inside. And you can see that this has a little cargo protector as well. So if you wanted to protect the valuables that are in the trunk of the ride, that is available as an option. Then looking at the trunk itself, there actually is a good amount of space in just the trunk area, but there's not really much feature-wise back here. A couple of lights along both sides, and then this is just the regular carpeted liner you're going to find. And then lifting it up, there is a little inflator kit off to the right-hand side. Well, here's the thing. There is the option for a mini spare tire inside of the Kicks. You have to get it at time of ordering your vehicle. You could also do it aftermarket if you missed that opportunity. But regardless of whether you have the spare tire or not, you do also have access to Nissan roadside assistance. So if you ever pop a tire, puncture a tire, lockout, need fuel delivery, things like that, it is available as an option. Then folding down the second row seats inside of the Kicks is going to be a manual process. So there are these funky little tabs along the very top you're going to grab and pull in order to fold the seats down. And it is a 60-40 split, so 40 on the driver, 60 on the passenger. And there's a decent amount of space back here. And depending on how far backwards those first row seats are, you might actually need to slide them forward a little bit in order to actually be able to fold down those second row seats. But there's a pretty good amount of space inside of this ride. I find those cargo protectors to be kind of useful. A little flimsy, but at the same time, pretty useful for making sure that your cargo is protected. Filling up fuel inside of the Kicks is done just along the passenger side. It is an unlocked cover that has a capless system with anti-siphon technology built in. Looking at fuel quality inside of the ride, it's just regular 87 gas. So regular fuel is all you need to use inside of this car. You are going to get slightly better fuel economy in front-wheel drive compared to all-wheel drive, but all-wheel drive is still my favorite, and it's not a big difference by any stretch. Looking at real-world fuel economy numbers in my testing so far, I have noticed that highway driving, I am getting better than advertised economy, but city driving, I'm not getting quite as good. And the big reason why, we're sitting at like -15, -20 degree weather in Canada right now. So it's a little bit cold, which means that I'm remote starting. So remote starting, winter driving, you are going to use up more fuel in comparison to those warmer months. But you do get pretty good economy inside of this thing. Looking at the size of the Kicks, so for comparison, I'm 6 feet tall and I am towering over this ride. If you're the adventurous type or you need it for road trips, you can get some crossbars. So if you need to put on a roof carrier, that is available from the factory or aftermarket. Then getting inside of the Kicks, first row, easy enough. Second, equally as easy. And one nice thing is that you do have assist handles across all 4 doors. The Kicks has a walk-away lock feature. So as long as you've got the fob on you, walk away, it'll lock the doors. As you walk towards it with the fob on you, it'll also unlock. But if you want to see how that's set up, check down in the description of this video. The side view mirrors are manual folding. Some versions have turn signals along with the side-mounted camera, and then there's a blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody enters the blind spot, that's going to highlight to let you know. There's a button on the door there you can push to either lock or unlock. And hopping inside. Along the door here, so the stitching that you're seeing here is unique to this trim level, but the feature sets here are going to be the same regardless. So you've got your lock and unlock buttons, window control, side view control, kill off power to the rear windows. And then you've also got some door storage with a speaker there. There's a hood release, and then these are just the carpeted mats. But look at this. Go for the thermoplastic rubber trays, especially if you live somewhere where it's going to get muddy, snowy, whatever the case may be. So these are a pain to clean. You're going to find manual adjust seats regardless of the trim level of the vehicle that you're in, with a few different types of seating material. Ooh. All right, so let's do a little start up here. Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Nissan Kicks. The Kicks technically has 2 different versions of the cluster screen that are available. There's a smaller 7-inch analog and the fully digital cluster screen here instead. This is obviously the digital, so I unfortunately haven't been able to get into one of the smaller screens, but if that's available, check down in the description of this video for a walkthrough on how that's done. But let's dive in. I'll show you what you need to know. The steering wheel inside of the Kicks might be heated depending on the trim level that you're in. So down by your left knee, there's a button there that you can toggle that heated steering wheel on. And there's another one just next to it, and that's going to be for steering assist. So I'll touch on steering assist as we get into the cruise control system. But if you ever get any messages inside of the cluster screen, you want to get rid of them, pressing the OK button, so the little rocker switch in the middle, pushing that in is going to get rid of them. The steering wheel is going to be manual telescoping, so down by your left knee, there's a release there to go in and out, up and down to find that perfect position. Once you do, click it, lock it back into place. Stick on the left-hand side is going to be for your blinkers, and then you can flash your high beams out. When you're in the auto mode though, you can't permanently lock your high beams out, so I'm in the auto mode here. You can flash them no problem, but in order to permanently lock out your high beams, all you're going to do is go into the upper light mode. You can then push away in order to permanently lock your high beams out, pull towards you in order to turn them off. But you're just going to be in the auto mode the majority of the time. And when you're in the auto mode, if the vehicle recognizes that the high beams are needed, it turns them on automatically. If somebody's oncoming, it's going to dim them before turning them off, and then when they pass, it's going to bring them right back up again. But you can always flash your high beams out regardless if you'd like to. From there, stick along the right-hand side is going to be for your wipers. So you've got your front wiper there, rear wiper in the back. But when you got your front wipers going, so one flip up is going to be a quick wipe. If you drop down a level, you could then use the little intermittent rocker in order to adjust it out for how fast or slow that rain's hitting the windshield. You're going to pull towards you to get the front wiper fluid going. You're going to push away to get that rear wiper fluid going instead. So many different buttons. You've got your buttons on the left-hand side are going to be for your volume, so you can adjust your volume this way. You could also change between songs or stations this way. And then there's a button here that you can push in order to get into some advanced settings. And then you're going to use this little pad in order to be able to move around all of the different settings here with an up and down switch too. But we'll touch on that one as we get inside of the cluster. Along this side, you've got your voice command prompt. So you'd be able to do things like change songs, radio stations, and a number of other things. So it's a pretty smart system. And then if you were hooked up for Android or iPhone devices, if you do a longer button push and hold instead, that's going to activate your assistant for your phone. If no phones are connected, it would bring up that option of adding in a device. You could then answer or hang up on a phone call this way. And then these buttons along the outside here are going to be for your cruise control. There are two different types of cruise. So you push the button in, that's going to turn you into an adaptive cruise control system. And adaptive, the way that that works is that if the vehicle recognizes it, like let's say if you have it set at 100 on the highway, car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically get a brake. They change lanes, you change lanes, they pick up speed, it's going to pick you back up to your previously set speed. But if you toggle the system off and then push and hold the button instead, that's going to toggle you into a traditional cruise control system. So traditional cruise is old school cruise. You set it at 100, car in front of you slows down, yours will not brake. So you just have to pay attention a little bit more. I'm personally a big fan of driving with the adaptive cruise, but that's going to be a matter of preference. So you toggle the system on there, and then you push down in order to set your speed. You could then increase or decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour at a time, or you can push and hold up or push and hold down to either increase or decrease 5 kilometers or 5 miles per hour at a time. So you're at 37 kilometers, push and hold up, it'll bring you to 40, 45, 50, etc. And then the opposite for down. You can hit the brake to cancel your speed, you can hit the cancel button to cancel your speed, then you can push up in order to resume your previously set speed. And then along the bottom right is a distance indicator. So there are 3 unique levels. I want you to think of it, well, it's a gap adjustment. So think of it like a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi rule for how close or far you are from the vehicle that's in front of you. I normally recommend level 1 if you're using it on residential streets. On highways and interstates, you might be okay with level 1. You might be on 2 or 3, just depending on your own personal comfort level. If you're going to be using the adaptive cruise on the highway or if you're in snowy conditions, level 3 might be the best bet, but that's going to be a matter of preference. But if you actually want to see the adaptive cruise control system used in person, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how that's done instead. But the system is incredibly straightforward to use. And then you've got your cluster screen and so many things. So you've got your tachometer off to the left-hand side, speedometer off to the right, your current time, your current outside temperature, along with your current engine temperature, and then your total odometer reading, your current mileage till empty, along with your fuel gauge. And since this is a Canadian spec vehicle, you've got kilometers an hour as the option here. And then along the very bottom, you've also got miles per hour. So you can swap these out. I'll show you how that's done as we dive into the settings of the screen. You've got what gear you're currently in. So park, reverse, neutral, drive as necessary. And then you can see that you're in your standard mode. So just to the right-hand side of the shifter, you've got the option of adjusting between different modes. So you've got your sport, standard versus eco mode. Sport mode, what that's going to do is change up your shift points. So rather than it shifting at maybe 2,500 RPM, it might wait and shift out at 3,500 or 4,000 RPM instead. So it's just going to give you a sportier performance versus something like the eco mode. That's essentially going to give you the best possible fuel economy. And then your snow mode is going to play with traction stability control just to help you out with wheel slippage during snowy conditions. But it's straightforward using those options. And then navigating through this part of the cluster screen is done using the rocker along the side here. So these buttons all along the outside. So as we move up and down, we go this way on the scroll wheel, you've got a series of different pages that you can move in between. So your 3 little dots there. And then as we move left and right, that's going to bring you to other options. So you've got your basic home screen where it's just naked. So if you wanted a screen with a little bit less information, you could go that way. And then you've also got your trip counter. You could push the OK button in the middle in order to be able to change it out to either trip 1 versus trip 2. And then if you push and hold, you've then got the option of resetting. So you can reset all options, your fuel economy, speed, distance, etc. And then pushing back using the left-hand pad there instead, so the left side. And then if you're on your fuel economy, same idea. You can push and hold to reset. Do you want to reset all items or just your average fuel economy instead? Out to the side, you've got your tire pressure, and then which wheel is getting which amount of power. I should say which axle is getting which amount of power as you drive. If you only had the regular front wheel drive, that would look slightly different. And then you've also got your current station. So if you hit OK, that's going to let you change out between all of your different sources. So AM, FM, SiriusXM. And then regardless, so if you're on AM, FM, you could then use these buttons here in order to change between all of your available presets. If you push and hold, that's going to act as a little seek button there instead. Moving out to the side, you've got either your speed limit sign, your different safety settings, and then you've got this screen. So when you've got the cruise control system turned on or off, it's going to look slightly different. But when it's turned on, you've got different safety settings that, again, you can toggle on or off. So we know that we're in adaptive cruise because of all of those safety options versus traditional cruise looks slightly different. So it's going to have a slightly different look there. And then remember that button along the bottom left-hand side there. So you've got your steering assist. So it's not going to be standard in every trim level of the ride, but what that does is it's essentially adaptive cruise control plus. So what the plus is the steering assist. So as long as the vehicle recognizes the lane markings, these are going to go green, and it's going to keep you perfectly balanced in your lane as you go. So it's not fully self-driving, but if you lose focus for a second, it's going to keep you nice and balanced. Eventually, after a few seconds, it's going to tell you that steering is required. So you need to put your hands back on the steering wheel. We're not there for fully self-driving in the Nissan world yet. And then you've got some different options here. So if we go into our menu now, you've got your driver assistance settings. So the lane assist, if you start to veer over into another lane without signaling, it can give you a warning. It can give you an intervention, so it'll nudge you back into your lane as well, or give you a vibration. So it's almost like you're running over rumble pavement, but you can adjust that out. Whether or not that actually happens, a matter of preference, your blind spot system. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, you can get notifications there. And then for emergency braking. So if there's ever an accident, it can brake for you. If you're backing up and you don't see an obstacle behind you, it can automatically brake for you as well. So I normally recommend keeping these things on, but it's going to come down to a matter of preference. And then your steering assist is available, and that's the one that keeps you nice and balanced, essentially following the lane as you go. And then there are a boatload of different settings. So you've got your VDC, so traction stability control. You can see when you did that, all sorts of different things come up. So keep this one turned on. The only time that you really want to toggle this system off is in extremely slippery or snowy conditions. So that's disabling your stability control, which is going to give you better traction overall in snowy conditions. Moving into driver assistance, again, we've seen all of these things a few different ways. Your lane assist, blind spot, and your emergency assist with your parking options here. So if you didn't have the forward reverse park sensing system, these wouldn't be available, but you can toggle them all on or off. So that beeping that you get as you get closer to obstacles. Rear cross traffic alert along the top. If you're going to back up and there's a car coming perpendicular, so from the left or the right side, it's going to let you know of a potential collision. And then, let's see here, nothing exciting. It's just going to be your volume. So do you want it to be a high volume, low volume? How far away are you before you start getting that notification as well? Driver monitor alertness. So as you start to drive, if you start to veer over into another lane without signaling, eventually it's going to tell you that you should probably take a break. So a few safety settings, so the lane safety setting, etc. Just use your blinker. Save yourself the headache of getting that monitor letting you know that you're not driving properly. Got a timer alert, low temp. So low temp, when you go to start the vehicle up, it's going to let you know that it's a little cold outside, so just drive carefully. And then your chassis control, nothing exciting. Eco mode, you've got the option of viewing your overall history. So when you turn the vehicle off, you'll get a screen that looks like this. So you'll be able to see what the best fuel economy is that you've gotten. As always, you could hit the cancel, or the OK button, I should say there, in order to reset. And then your tire pressure is here. So tire pressure, do you want to be in PSI, KPA, or bar? You've got different options there. your clock, whether or not the clock is going to show up there, yay or nay. You can set it manually if you'd like to this way. And then do you prefer that military time instead? So the 12 versus 24-hour mode. Some additional vehicle settings for lighting. So welcome headlight when you go to unlock the vehicle. Accent lighting that traces all the way throughout on the inside. It's a subtle look. It's kind of neat. You can't change the color, but you've got a little bit of ambient light there. And then light off delay. So when you go to lock the vehicle, the lights just turn off, or do they stay on for up to 3 minutes? So you've got that option available. You can adjust it out. Locking. Do you want that outside door switch, so the button on the handle to work, yay or nay? Door auto unlock. So when do you want the doors to unlock? When you shift the vehicle to park? When you turn the ignition off? Or do you just never want the doors to automatically unlock? Do you want to get a little horn beep when you go to lock the vehicle? And walkaway lock is a pretty cool one too, because if the vehicle recognizes that you haven't locked the doors and you've got the fob on you start to walk away, it'll lock the doors for you automatically. And as you approach the vehicle with your key fob on you, it's going to automatically unlock the doors for you too. Basics for your wipers, so rain sensing, reverse link. If you've got your wipers going and then you go to put the vehicle in reverse, with this turned on, it's automatically going to turn on the rear wiper for you as well. And then the drip wipe is that extra wipe. So at the end of a washer cycle, it's going to go one more time to get rid of any excess liquid. And from here, maintenance information. So for your oil or tires, you can kind of customize the display a little bit. So your menu selection, so that main screen that we saw, do you want it to be blank, or what information do you want showing up inside of that screen? So rather than it being a blank screen, you can have any of these other options show up. So your tire pressure systems, let's see here. Probably going to keep it on the blank screen, because if you ever want it to be blank, you've got that available. Your welcome effect, so when you go to first turn the vehicle on, what do you want it to look like? Or do you want it to have a welcome effect or just start up? And then you've also got your wiper here for the front or rear. So you can essentially toggle a lot of these things off, and then your high beam assist. So that's the one where if you're in the auto mode, the vehicle is automatically going to turn the high beams on as necessary. So just make sure that that one's enabled. And your units, change it out. So you can be in either miles per gallon, liters per 100. And you can see as we make the switch here, it changes out your speed along the very bottom. So because this is a Canadian spec, I want to be in kilometers the majority of the time. If you're cross-border, you could switch it out easily this way. This is one of the benefits of being a fully digital screen, is it just adjusts everything out for us instead. Tire pressure, do you want to be in PSI, kPa, or bars, Celsius, or Fahrenheit for your temp? And then for your language, English, French, or Spanish, and that's going to be region specific. And then you can do a full reset instead. So if you played around with the settings too much and you don't like what you've done, you can reset yourself out from there. Just along the top of the screen here, there are also a few different buttons, and that's going to be to adjust the brightness of the cluster screen. So if you want it brighter, darker, whatever the case may be, all you're going to do, tap the buttons along the very top there in order to adjust it out. Now with the seat, the seat is as far down as it's going to go. Like I said, I'm 6 feet tall. Up overhead, I've got 3.5-ish inches of headspace. So not a ton of space by any stretch, but still enough that I'd be okay sitting in the first or second row of this ride. I'll show you the second in just a minute, but the seat comfort is there. So this seat is a leatherette. So there's either going to be cloth seats or this leatherette seat, which has like a little cloth insert, but the overall seat comfort is great. And I like that little Bose highlight along the seats there as well. Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Nissan Kicks. This is for the 2025 plus models, so I haven't been able to get into one of the previous gen versions yet, but if I'm able to and you want to walk through on that screen, if it's available, you'll find it down in the description of this video. But let's dive in and I'll show you everything that you need to know about this screen. So starting off, you've got some icons along the top left-hand side. Well, I should say the far left-hand side. So the top one is going to be a notifications icon. So if there are any notifications available, it would let you know. If there were multiple, you could just delete all or hit the settings icon there in order to get notifications for different things. There's a home icon there as well, which is going to bring you into this basic home screen. And you've got the flexibility to be able to add in and customize to create some unique widgets, which is kind of useful. So if you wanted to add certain things in, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. From there, there's a hot button press in order to get to your media, your phone as well, if there was a phone connected, and then you've also got your climate control settings. Down the middle here, you do have the option of adjusting a few different things out. So you can toggle on your heated first row seats if you had them available, adjust your climate this way, rear defroster, front defroster, and things like that, along with your fan speed and toggling on or off. It's set through the infotainment system. You have a few other things that are available. So you can have it go to your windshield, face, feet, some sort of Frankenstein combination of the above. You can toggle on your seats as well too. So those heated first row seats, adjust your climate this way. Air circulation's there, and then you could have it going to windshield, face, feet this way instead. So you've got a few different ways that you can adjust this out. You can toggle it off, hit the settings icon in order to get into some additional climate settings. Honestly, these ones, I would just recommend keeping it at the default here. There's no point in changing. The icons that are here are also locked into place, so there's no readjusting them or organizing them. They're locked into place there. So let's dive into the screen and I'll show you everything that you need to know. The first thing is we've got our radio here. In radio, you've got a mix of AM, FM, SiriusXM. If you had a USB stick with MP3s, that would be available. If your phone was hooked up over Bluetooth, that would also show up as well. You can hit this in order to collapse or show the different sources that are available. And then AM, FM are going to give you the same basic look. Along the bottom, all of your presets are a mix of AM, FM, and SiriusXM. If you wanted to be able to save in a preset, all you have to do is tune to whatever station. You can do that a few ways. You can hit the FM list to see which stations are available. So if you're new to an area, you can refresh it. If radio text was available, this information here, that would show up. You can tune to stations this way. You could type in order to change out to the different stations this way. You can also use the voice command prompt in order to be able to change out stations that way instead.
Voice recognition.
Honestly, my favorite way of changing stations is just the voice command prompt until you have a series of different stations available. But in order to save a preset, all you're going to do, push and hold. You heard that little chime. That's going to overwrite from there. So straightforward. And then I mentioned tuning stations out. If you hit the settings icon along the very top, you can also manage your presets. So you've got all of the different presets that have been added in. So if you wanted to, you could select all if you wanted to delete them. Deselect, and then if you wanted to delete certain ones, you want to delete this guy, that guy, delete, and you can see there, we've now got some empty stations that are available. Moving back, you can adjust out some audio settings, which I'll show you as we dive deeper into the additional settings. And then SiriusXM gives you a few other options available too, so you can still browse for different channels. So if you're a big SiriusXM listener, you've got that available as an option. You can tune to stations this way, and then if you've got a song or an artist that's playing and you love them, you can hit this, and then if the either song or artist comes on, when you're listening to SiriusXM, or technically on any other screen, if it's available on SiriusXM, you'll get a notification giving you a heads up that that song is now playing. You can see what related songs are available here as well. So it's straightforward using media inside of the ride. Next up is going to be adding in a phone. Start off on the iPhone side of things, and we're just going to tap Add Device, and waiting a second here for my Kicks to show up. There we go. Pin numbers match up, so let's go ahead and pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm saying no to that one, and you're set to go. Now, from here, you are set, so you can just make phone calls. You can also stream audio this way, but you've also got the option for Apple CarPlay. So Apple CarPlay is wireless inside of this ride. It is backwards compatible, so you could use a USB Type-C cable as well if you wanted to, but you've got wireless support, which is amazing. You can see here, we've got the CarPlay icon that's popped up, so you can push that in order to get back into CarPlay. And you've got your current time, battery, and connection level, which map was open last, your audio application, and then miscellaneous application. From here, you can go to a little icon view, or to your home screen, I should say, into an icon view, and there are a bunch of different apps available. Now, this screen is kind of locked into place. So you've got your map that was previously used, your basic search options there, and then your media. If you've got a calendar notification coming up today, that would show up. If there were no calendar notifications today, the search box and then your media box would essentially be fuller screen instead. But you've got podcasts that are available inside of the ride. Hoopla is a library app. Live One's a radio app. YouTube Music is available there. And through this screen, you don't have the option of watching video. So it's strictly going to be audio inside of the ride. You can kind of customize the layout here too. I'll show you that in a second, but going through settings, you can also change out the appearance if you wanted to change out the wallpaper. So if you wanted something a little bit darker, more to suit your style, that is available. Hitting this icon gets you back to this screen. And you do have Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze inside of the ride. But the downside to Apple CarPlay is there's no pinch to zoom capabilities. You could hit this in order to zoom in or out if you'd like to. I'm personally a big fan of using Waze because as you start to move around, if there are speed traps, red light cameras, things like that, people are pretty good at marking these types of things off, construction, slowdowns, etc. And then you can mark things off yourself. So if you notice a speed trap, if you notice that there are hazards on the road, things like that, you can give other drivers a heads up. But Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze all work extremely well inside of this ride. Like I said, just no pinch to zoom capabilities. When you've hooked your phone up on the steering wheel, so you've got your voice command prompt, if you do a short button push, that's going to be a button.
Voice recognition.
Yeah, that's going to be a button in order to get to your vehicle assistant, so the screen assistant. But if you take that same button and if you do a longer push and hold instead, that is going to activate your Siri assistant. So short button push is going to be the factory assistant, long button push is going to be your Siri assistant instead. Then you do have the option of adjusting the layout of these icons. So what you're going to do on your phone, you're going to go into your settings, general, and then CarPlay. You're just going to find your vehicle. You can forget it and customize it, and this is where we want to go. But if you can't even get to this step, like let's say if Apple CarPlay is not working at all, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how you can fix CarPlay issues. But what we're going to do here, let's say if you wanted your podcast along the very top and you wanted to have your map along the very top, you can adjust these out. Anything with a minus next to it, you can remove it from the screen, and it fully deletes it from the screen. But it saves it along the very bottom. So you could add the icons back in. But let's say if you played around with the layout too much, you don't like what you've done, along the top right-hand side of your phone, there's a reset button. So you're going to go reset, reset, and that's just going to bring you back to the default icon layout there instead. Back on the home screen, you could jump back into your phone this way, back out. You're also going to go back home into connections, and the connections brings us back up to this screen. So Apple CarPlay, you've got the device that's been added in there. We've got our Bluetooth available here as well. So Apple CarPlay is available, or you could disconnect from CarPlay if you just wanted to make phone calls. So you could do phone calls and streaming audio through CarPlay, but it's going to be a matter of preference here. Once you're connected back over, hitting the icon view there is going to give you a few other options. So you could activate or deactivate Bluetooth audio, Apple CarPlay, other startup options as well, or you can delete the device. So you could either be hooked up to Apple CarPlay or either of these two settings as well. So straightforward, but that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Nissan Kicks. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on your connection screen here, all you're going to do, back to the home screen, hitting connections, and just add a new device. So let's go ahead and hit OK there. And we're just waiting for my Kicks to show up again. There we go. And you're just going to connect through. PIN numbers match up, so let's go ahead and hit OK there. And you can see there, asking me the same thing. Do I want to allow access to my contacts and messages? I'm going to say no to that one just because this is not my car. And let's go ahead and start wireless Android Auto. You can use a USB Type-C cable if you wanted to connect that way instead, but we are now fully connected. So you've got your map application there. You can hit this in order to go to this little icon view instead. So if you prefer the icon setup, that's available to get into different options. You've got your map here. If you tap the map, that's going to bring you into full screen. And one thing that I love about the Android Auto side of things is that it's full pinch to zoom capabilities. You can search for addresses easily, change up your heading views and things like that. Pushing this gets you back to this little split screen. You've got your assistant that you can activate that way, or a long button push and hold on the steering wheel button in order to get to the assistant that way instead. You've got a series of other apps that are available, along with your connection level, your battery level, and then the current time. Now, on the icon view here, if you've got Waze installed on your Android device, but it's not showing up, check down in the description of this video. I put together a little walkthrough explaining how you can get Waze and other apps into Android devices. But you can also adjust this out the same way we saw on the iPhone side to a degree. So on your Android, you're going to search for Android Auto, go into Android Auto settings, and that's going to give you options here. You're looking for customize launcher. And customizing the launcher, it's the same idea. So if you wanted different apps to be moved around, you'd have the flexibility to do it. Anything with a check mark next to it, you could remove it from the screen as well, but it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side. So if you want these changes to come into effect, you just have to go to the home screen, go to your connections, you're going to disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto. There we go, hopping back in. Let's wait for that to fully load, and icon view. And the changes that we've made here have not come into effect. So it's not dynamic the same way, but you still have the flexibility of adjusting this out if you'd like to. Hopping back home now, if you jump back into your connections, you've got both phones that have been connected. You can set one of them as a favorite as well. So if you've got two phones connected, it's who's going to try to connect to first. You can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both. But one of the nice things is that you can connect to either or as well if you'd like. So if you wanted to have one phone connected for phone calls, one phone connected for media, so you can kind of do like a little bit of a mix and match here instead if you want to. It's kind of going wonky here as I move around, but you've got that flexibility. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can kind of do a mix and match of these other options instead. If you hit the little icon view now, you can kind of change these around if you'd like, or hit delete and yes. And that's going to delete the phone from the vehicle. And let's do that on the Android as well. Info, delete, and yes. And a few seconds in, and we are set to go. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Nissan Kicks. And back home from here, you've got your current time along the outside there, so you can show whether or not you want that clock showing up or not, yay or nay. Do you prefer the military time instead, so 12 versus 24-hour mode? How do you want your date format to be set up? And then you can also set your clock manually. So if you want to, you can adjust the day, month, year this way instead. And back, next up, we've got basic, more info, notifications, system info. There's nothing overly exciting in this screen. Connections brings us back to that same connection screen that we saw. And then there are user profiles. One of the big benefits of setting up individual profiles is that if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you can have it remember all of your presets, the phone that you've connected and things like that, even your key fob. So you can easily edit out, save different users in here as well. If you're the only person driving, you can just leave it there, but straightforward. And back, we've got our radio here again, which we've already seen. And swiping across into our last screen. And then if we go into our settings along the top right-hand side, that gives us a boatload of different options. Starting off again with our connection options. So Android Auto, Apple CarPlay if your phone is connected, or USB if you had a USB stick hooked up there. If your phone is connected, that would show up. You could adjust some sounds and beeps. So sound settings, you can adjust your treble, mid-range, and bass. So bass is cranked quite a little bit, so I'd probably drop that a little. Treble is up pretty high, so a few points there. So in this car, I've personally found that the bass up a bit, treble up a tiny little bit, gives good audio. But what I actually recommend here is play one of your favorite songs. And while the song is playing, adjust these out until it sounds perfect for your ears instead. There are 3 different speaker choices that are available inside of this ride. So you're either going to find a 4-speaker, there's a 6-speaker, and then you've got a 10-speaker Bose audio system instead. So the 10-speaker setup is way better in comparison to the lower trim levels. The 6-speaker is still pretty good, especially because the cabin here is pretty small. But when you get into the 10-speaker, if you're an audiophile, you're going to love the audio that you get inside of this ride. And then you've also got your speed-sensitive volumes and beeps, so you can adjust out your audio this way as you go up. That'll adjust it this way. Do you want your ringtone to be at a different volume? If you had your phone hooked up, you could also adjust your phone volume there. And then beeps. Do you want that, yay or nay? Listen to this. Do you want that? I think it's a little tacky, so I would turn that one off myself. System voice. So you've got that voice command prompt that's on the steering wheel. So you've got
Canceling
your
voice recognition.
Voice prompt there. So if you have the initial prompt, listen to this.
Say a command. Canceling voice recognition.
I'd recommend keeping that one turned off and then make sure that short prompts are turned on as instead. It's essentially an advanced mode when you do it this way. You can have it be either a male or a female voice. You can change how fast they're speaking and a few other things. You can also say, hello, Nissan. And that's going to bring up your voice assistant instead that way. So you've got a few different ways that you can get into your voice assistant. And from here, you've got clock, which we've already seen the different clock settings that are available. You can customize your menu, so your home screen there. If you wanted to adjust these things out, you could delete because there were a few things that were duplicated. You can exit out. You can, I should say, hit the X button there in order to be able to remove those. And then you can customize your sources that are along the very bottom there. So you can see all of your different audio sources. So if you have a tendency to maybe listen to Apple CarPlay instead, you're never going to listen to your Bluetooth. You could just do a drag. Actually, I'll show you here. So just drag and let's replace USB. So you can drag in order to replace any of these options here. So when we're on the media screen here, in our sources, that's going to be the layout of these different icons. So you can kind of adjust it out like a TV a little bit. And from here into, I guess, general settings. From here, you could toggle the display off if you'd like to, and then you could also push. There we go. And from here, you could also change out your language. Do you want to be in either English, French, or Spanish? You can change out your units here as well. So do you want to be in either Celsius or Fahrenheit? And that's actually going to change up what's going on inside of the cluster screen. So you can see that change happening right there. And then obviously if you're in your climate screen there, you can see the changes that you make that way instead. Your keyboard type, and then you could just do a default, so bring everything back to the default settings instead. Your camera options for display, so you can adjust the brightness, the contrast levels, black levels, and things like that. But as we look at our rear view camera display or the around view monitor as available, so you can kind of see that. Adjust things out if you want to. So again, making things brighter, darker, changing the black levels or contrast. I personally find just leaving it as the default is good enough for me. Climate settings, we've seen a few of these ones, and just make sure you leave it at the default. There's nothing exciting there. You can edit your existing user profile again, which we've seen, and then just some basic more information. So nothing overly exciting there. It does say all settings, but yeah, we're already in the all settings, okay. But that's the basics of using the screen. And then just underneath the screen, you've got a series of other options. So you've got your four-way blinkers that are available there. You can change between songs or stations. There's a volume rocker here. You could also toggle your audio on or off this way. There's a camera button there, so you could bring up your camera, pressing it a few different times in order to get into different views, which is kind of useful. So if you just want one view or the other, you've got your side-mounted camera view there instead, into your backup camera. And if for whatever reason, let's say the screen's giving you problems, so Android Auto, Apple CarPlay aren't working, it's just bugging out and it's not working properly, you can easily do a screen reboot as well. So all you're going to do is push and hold the volume button in for about 5 to 10 seconds or so. So just keep on holding, and then eventually, there we go. You can see there, so there was a little click, and what it's done, you can see there's nothing on the screen anymore. We're running into this little reboot cycle. So what it's doing is it's essentially deleting the cache. It's the same thing as if you were to restart your phone if it's giving you problems. So it takes a few seconds there, and it's essentially going to reload everything. So if the screen's going slow, like I said, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, or your phone connection's not working properly, you've got the flexibility of easily being able to do a soft reboot instead of doing a factory reset instead. You're going to have single zone climate control. There's the option for heated seats in most trims, your push button start with parking brake and an auto hold setting. This one's kind of neat because when it's enabled, if you are in drive, you take your foot off the brake, the car is not going to move. It's actually kind of a neat one. From there, you've got a few different power points. So there's a USB Type-C that's for data on both sides with a wireless charge pad. The highlight that you see here is going to be exclusive to this trim level. You've got some cup holders though, and that stitching that follows all the way throughout, like even through the dash. Looks pretty good. There's a good amount of space. Well, I should say decent amount of space inside of the armrest. It's a non-lockable glove box here with a good amount of space there. And then Nissan was almost going for like a carbon fiber highlight, but it's faux leather. I would say that's going to be like a leatherette feel to it as well, just with a look of carbon fiber. The overall visibility inside of the ride is pretty good. Up overhead, this one has an auto-dimming rear view mirror. There's a sunglasses holder, basic controls for your cabin lights, and then there's also the option for a full panoramic sunroof. Like it opens up to the second row even too. It's so good. Look at that. Just opens things up so nicely. When it's up like this, you can push up in order to create a little breeze, swipe away in order to open it up, and you can see it's dropping down. See, we've got some good weather protection there. Does it open up anymore? No, okay, so that's as far as it's gonna go. Still, it's pretty good. Just opens things up so nicely. I like that. Overhead here, there's no ticket receipt holder on the outside, but there is on the inside there. Vanity mirror has lights built in over top. I like this, the highlight sliding visor, which means, bam, that's blocking all of the sun that might end up hitting your face. There's an assist handle up overhead here, but I mean, for the price point, the style and feature sets that you get inside of the Kicks, I would say is pretty good. Then, Second row, you've got that same like neoprene type of a highlight with a little window control, some door storage, and then the seats. Ooh, and the second row here aren't bad from a comfort perspective. We need that. Right. All right. And looking with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, my knees can fit, my feet can fit, so I've got a decent amount of space there. It's a little tight behind the knees. Then up overhead, with me sitting fully upright, I've got an inch and a half of headspace there. So not a ton of space by any stretch, but I can sit in the second row of this car, which like for cars this size, typically, it's not happening. Not bad. Now, middle seat wise though, there's a little hump in the floor. So, ooh, with the passenger seat slid back, gee, as far as it's gonna go, that is super tight. Yeah, if I sit in the middle seat, not only is it not gonna work for anybody sitting there, but look at this. There we go. Yeah, super tight in the middle seat. So my head is actually touching the roof in the middle seat. So from a safety perspective, I would never want to sit back here in the middle seat. If I was taller than, like, I would say maybe 5'9", maybe 5'10". But if you've got shorter family members or friends, they'll be okay if you need it. You've got your anchor points there with the tethers behind the seat. There's also, there you go, cup holders built right in. You're going to find some pockets behind both the passenger and the driver's side, along with a few USB Type-C power points. So these ones are strictly for charging. Outside of that, you've got a little handle along the passenger side. Driver's side is the same, little handle as well. And then you're gonna find cabin control lights. I gotta say overall so far, the Kicks for the price point has actually been kind of nice. No real complaints because I'm taking it objectively, but let's do some on-route handling here. 2-liter engine wants to fly. Not bad. Now the handling there is pretty good. All-wheel drive, which is a definite plus. So there is some cabin noise inside of the Kicks. It's nothing that you couldn't live with. I mean, it's a little loud. Not too bad. There's no active noise cancellation in the ride, so it kind of makes sense. And responsiveness. It's actually pretty good. I'm actually kind of surprised. Not bad. And then the turning radius in the car. Wait. Oh, I didn't pull. Oh, did I pull for enough? Oh, not bad. All right. And that was everything you needed to know about the Nissan Kicks. You can find a build link for this specific Kicks down in the description, along with links off to Nissan Canada and US. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful. And until I see you next time, take care. Depending on how tall you are though, you might need to move the forward. And depending on how far forward those or backwards. If you're the adventurous type, you do have the option of getting crossbars right from the factory. You can always go aftermarket if you need to put in crossbars, a roof rack carrying dirt. So chilly. All right, here we go.